Everybody, welcome to the Evangelical Dark Web. Tonight, we're going to be discussing the 2022 midterm elections live, and we're going to be taking live interaction, just live questions, live analysis. We're going to be having a conversation that we haven't really talked ahead of time about, so it's actually good to have us both here on tonight, Team Evangelical Dark Web, and we'll see who else joins us as well tonight. But in the meantime, we're going to have a raw, unfiltered discussion, and that's what tonight's going to be about. So, with that said, the 2022 midterms, it has been insane. It's been pretty insane thus far, and from a Christian perspective, we can't exactly look at it and say this was such a great election. And you just can't, like, overtly Christian candidates lost or even got blown out. So we're going to be talking about that. We're going to be talking about Trump versus DeSantis, which I'm sure is a topic of many interest. But I do first want to start out talking about the name of the stream. The name of the stream is A Mighty Fortified Election Stream. I'm sure you get the reference. And this is just a joke that I came up with at 2:00 in the morning, but it's actually a really good title.
Just like the data, just like the ballot drops.
This is a very fortified election that we're looking at, particularly at the states of Arizona and Nevada. These are not states that have a history of counting votes quickly, and that's just how we'll put it. They're very election fortified. Like Nevada, as far as I know, they've always not been good at this. And that's not to say that the results are untrustworthy, but the process, to me, like they've always had issues, whether it's a primary election, whether it's a general. I always kind of think Nevada's a problem child, but Arizona, Katie Hobbs is in charge of that. But so, that's really what it comes down to. But we await the slow counting of the votes that are outstanding in Arizona, in Nevada. Alaska also wants to take their sweet time, but they have a new system called ranked choice voting, which is really bad, really cringe. So not a fan of that because it's deliberately designed to keep people like Murkowski in office. So, and what's the other Senate race that's outstanding?
Laxalt.
Georgia.
Oh,
And
Georgia.
that's going to a runoff. So we'll also talk about Mehmet Oz and Herschel Walker tonight, because again, we said some pretty saucy things about Mehmet Oz back in, was it March, April, or May, several months ago. And we stand by those statements, and we are vindicated by those statements. Mehmet Oz was a terrible candidate. He was a ballot blue pill, and it did not pay off. It just did not pay off. But again, we're going to have a lot of discussion tonight. Trump versus DeSantis, I'm sure, is a topic that many of you want to talk about. And now that I see that the live stream count is growing, good reminder to both like the stream to get it magical YouTube algorithms to help them out, and also comment, submit your questions. We're going to do a lot of interaction tonight because, it's just Team Evangelical Dark Web here. Guests didn't really get back to me on coming up. So like the stream, send in your questions, and, let's just dive right on in. So where do you want to begin?
I mean,
maybe local's the best place to begin.
Yeah, local. I mean, obviously, Dan Cox lost on Maryland.
So
it probably wasn't.
Dan Cox, just for everybody's knowledge, is your basic Christian nationalist candidate. He is incredibly based. When I was running for office, he endorsed me. We got a picture next to Dan Cox. So I love Dan Cox. I love Michael Perotka as well, who was featured in the NBC Scare piece on Christian nationalism that Doug Wilson was in. They also had Michael Perotka in that as well. They had a clip of him. So definitely love those candidates, but Dan Cox got schlocked. Like, he didn't even break past 40% or something like that. So he got completely blown out in Maryland, and the Republicans underneath him did better. Even Perotka, even though Cox and Perotka are the same candidate, it's that kind of low info voter that says, I'm going to not vote for Cox, but then I'm going to vote Republican down ballot,
Well, he
and
also might have
including Perotka.
gotten like Constitutional Party or even Libertarian supporters, and then I guess I don't know how many people voted Shellick or whatever his name was. That was like a write-in. The trucker
None in Carroll
convoy.
County, that from what I saw. So in Maryland, we got crushed, and it's largely because the Hoganites wanted to sack a Republican nominee because their girl lost. And granted, I would have not voted for their girl, Kelly Scholes. I wouldn't have voted for Kelly Scholes. She's a Democrat in my mind, but they're petty. They're petty. They were petty like that. They didn't like the fact that a real Republican got nominated in Maryland over their girl, so they sacked him, and that's what happened. So, I'm getting a question about the who or what stopped the supposed red wave. We'll talk about that for sure, but I just wanted to start off local.
Oh, and Parrott.
Neil
Got in.
Perot. No, I do not think he's going to get in.
You don't think he's going to get in?
I think that mail-in ballot that's remaining is going to knock him out.
Wow.
That's my thought, because in the primary election in Maryland, they count the mail-in ballots and the absentee ballots last. Now, the absentee is a non-factor, absentee provisional non-factor in this, but the mail-in ballots, they were 2-1 Scholes over Cox in the primary where we live. So I imagine that breakdown is pretty universal throughout the state, that these are going to be 2-1 against Trump, for Trump. That's my guess as to what's going to happen with that mail-in. So I don't think Maryland's going to net a Republican congressman in this election cycle. So, but I do believe our Board of Election candidates won, our Cox endorsed Board of Education candidates. So we did win locally at the Board of Education level. I do believe we're going to win that. When the mail-in ballots are counted, we're at least going to win 2 out of 3 seats, which maintains the current balance of power. Now, if we win all 3, then we have a complete 5-0 slate, clean sweep on the Board of Education. Because ironically, despite how liberal Maryland is, we are a county that has made national news on a couple occasions this year for the battles with the Board of Education. Our Board of Education the parents in our county were a little ahead of the game in terms of the national conversation and getting involved. It took some very disastrous policies to get there, but we are actually pretty ahead of the game with the parent organization in this county. But it did not translate to top of the ballot in the county as well. So that, I believe, covers local. Where do we want to go from here? The Senate, the House, the governors.
I mean, I think a lot of times with a lot of the Senate and the House are kind of the same story on a broad scale. I mean, I guess we could start off with what was Team GOP's message going into the primary or into the general on Tuesday, because you know, you have
maybe I'm an outlier, but I thought the Republicans did have a message, but maybe it's the fact that I'm paying attention to certain campaigns that do have a message and thinking that was applied universally. Because Kari Lake had a message. Lee Zeldin had a message. Ron DeSantis had a message.
Yeah, a lot of the candidates that did well had messages, but at the same time, on a national level,
who didn't have a message?
I mean, I think in general, a lot of, like, if you ask me what was the Team GOP congressional message going into the thing, it was inflation, which again, you know, we'll probably talk about it later, but let's be honest, the Republicans are just as responsible for inflation as Biden is, because they instigated all the spending, all the same as the Democrats.
So Marie asked, was abortion more important than the economy?
We might get to that later, but
I think, you know, since we're talking about messaging, I think now's the perfect time to address that. Like, "It's the economy, stupid" was a mantra, a political mantra for decades in this country, but I think that mantra is dead.
Yeah, I mean, people didn't need reminders that the economy sucked. I mean, we were pretty much in recession for the first half of this year. Obviously, gas prices, but Biden pretty much tempered the gas prices by dumping the oil reserves, which kind of faded the gas prices going into the fall. That plan pretty much worked out perfectly,
Okay, what about buying off college students?
which didn't work apparently because I think that got struck down today.
Yeah, but do you think the people at the ballot remember that?
Honestly, I think the
Or do you think the people at the ballot are thankful that the Democrats tried to do it, or thankful that, or bitter that they didn't succeed?
I think this is where the abortion thing goes in more because I think it's because one thing I saw and I have it pulled up is unmarried women were 68% Democrat in this cycle. So I think abortion is probably a bigger issue than the economy for these women because obviously they're emotional and they're unmarried, so they're untethered and they just want to be able to kill children. So I
Yeah,
think abortion is what really drove out a young woman's vote in this cycle. And that's probably, I mean, average age of unmarried women is, well, average age of first marriage is about 29 for a woman. So that's your Zoomers and I guess later millennials that are pretty much falling under that umbrella. And the Roe v. Wade pretty much. I mean, they're saying that drove them to vote. Obviously, I think
I think in
abortion had
addition to Roe v. Wade, there was also a couple states that had ballot measures as
yes,
well.
Michigan being one of them.
Yes. So Tudor Dixon uh, was pretty disappointing. And
Yeah,
I,
I
I
mean,
knew that was a tough race, not because Governor Whitmer is a popular figure, but because she's a politically powerful figure in that country, in that part of the country. She is, I think, a politically well-off family. Like there's a dynasty thing going on there. So, uh, let's see. Smart, Simple Fit has a order of crimes. Let's see. Abortion, gay marriage, CRT, crime is a greater issue than taxes, gun control, deregulation. All these issues matter, though, and I gotta agree with that. I gotta agree with that. I don't think gay marriage is as big of an issue, but I see the argument to be made. But critical race theory, major issue. Crime, major issue, especially in New York. And abortion is a major issue, but the Republicans kind of caved on the abortion issue.
I mean,
Uh,
one thing I am seeing is, and again, I would think like for a state like Michigan. I mean, the economy is not going to be as impactful as the abortion ballot because I think the abortion got 56% of the vote. I'm looking at it right now, 56.7, so almost
that's about as
57% of the
much
vote.
as Gretchen Whitmer did, or maybe slightly
It
higher.
slightly outperformed Gretchen Whitmer, but she got 62% of the women in that cycle. So I mean, the idea that Michigan's pretty much your classic Rust Belt state. It's been destroyed by unions, Democrats, and basically all the jobs going away because of globalism. So they are ripe for an economic message, but that's primarily going to appeal to men.
I agree.
And
And, as much as we want to say that women are, demonic, let's actually pat ourselves on the back here as men, because like the men skewed heavy Republican. And this is what I said at the end of the 2020 election was that the real political realignment in this country is going to be those who favor biblical gender roles versus those who do not. The masculine and the feminine versus the effeminate and the androgynous. That is the political realignment in this country.
yeah,
So,
and the other thing is like this myth of the secret conservative black voter. Tudor Dixon and the exit polls got 6%. So there's no secret hidden conservatism amongst the black community. It doesn't
no, there's
exist.
definitely not. No.
And
Uh,
6%. I mean, read that and weep. Does
uh,
it no amount
I
of
mean, maybe I wonder if Ron DeSantis did better.
oh, I imagine, but
I imagine he did because he outperformed everything. So one thing we could look at is how he got nearly 60% in Florida, which is huge. That's Chuck Grassley numbers, which Chuck Grassley did not meet this cycle. He did not get those numbers this cycle, but that's how much of a blowout that election was in Florida. But I think you're right. Uh, on the abortion as a major issue. And you know what? At the end of the day, worth it. Worth it. Overturning Roe v. Wade was worth it. I don't care about electing a rhino governor in Tudor Dixon, probably. I don't care about electing a rhino senator in Mehmet Oz. And, who cares about Oregon? I don't. As far as their governor race goes, I don't care about that. I wanted Roe v. Wade overturned. That is a much bigger victory than anything this election could have delivered. So, uh, that's just for starters. We got to say worth it at the end of the day. So this was a good year politically for us, even if the election was not what we were promised, what we anticipated. So we need to stop dooming, because I actually am a little bit optimistic about this. And we're going to talk about that as well, as far as some of the fallout from this election and what messages people are getting in this. So we got a question from Formosan Black Bear. Grass is legal in Maryland, right? It was passed this election, and the answer to that is yes, but there's no policy,
Yeah, I
which
mean
is the weird thing. They just put in the Constitution that the Maryland state legislature can regulate and legalize marijuana, but there's no policy attached to it. So people just voted for a blanket, and there's no actual policy.
hey, I passed on grass, so I didn't even bother with that.
Yeah, it was yeah, I mean, it was useless anyway. What's the point? You put that in a referendum, it's going to pass 100% of the time, because that's just where the country's at. So, and it's a non-issue to me. I don't smoke marijuana. I just don't care. I got too many other issues to care about, like that issue that Smart Simple Fit, I believe it was your list of issues. Yeah, that was, all those issues are more important than marijuana. Every issue is more important than marijuana, because I don't care about people smoking weed. I don't have time to care about that. Fentanyl, much bigger issue. uh but and of course the other experimental drugs are a much bigger issue. So that is a nice little pausing point. So obviously, abortion is a major issue in this election cycle. The economy, not as much a major issue. That's kind of a disappointment, but the old paradigm is gone. And I guess the next topic, which we kind of already alluded to, is the whole Gen Z vote. And I've always said that Gen Z is a very polarized generation. I've always said that. They're a very polarized generation, but I've always called that a good thing. I've called that a good thing because, yes, there's a bunch of them, majority are liberal, right? But the ones who are conservative get it. The ones that are conservative are more conservative than, many boomer cons, more conservative than, they're in line with the Gen Xers and probably more conservative than a lot of millennials. So the
Yeah, I
ones who
mean
are conservative are really conservative,
they're
but
not
the ones
going
that
on
are
the life
liberal
journey.
are cutting off their boobs and penises
Yeah,
and shouting their abortions.
on the right, they're not going through the generational learning arc of let me, be a Reagan conservative, then, compassionate conservatism with Bush, go through your little war hawk phase of America, world police. They're not going through that arc and then maybe libertarianism and then receding back
I was a
towards more of a
libertarian
conservative.
in college.
Yeah, I mean, they're not going
Yeah.
on that journey as much because their entry level conservative content is not there, or it's closer to the libertarian conservative. So you're skipping past the Warhawk, Bush, and all that, and
Well,
towards
at the same time, who are the biggest names in conservative media? Obviously, Sean Hannity is somewhere on the list. Glenn Beck is somewhere on the list. And uh, remind me about Glenn Beck, because he said something that was just complete clown nonsense. That was Mormonism, but just saying. And then Mark Levin, neocon, who I just don't think has been anywhere in the last couple of years. And then you got Ben Shapiro, Steven Crowder, largest YouTube conservative channel. Again, very all normies. And we kind of need to onboard people a little bit faster into conservatism. We need to promote the people who are doing excellent. Oh, Tucker Carlson, thank you in the chat for reminding me of him. He was
Yeah, I
actually
mean,
really based. So this is what Glenn Beck said during the Blaze's pretty lackluster election coverage. Like, I was really disappointed. Like, all this chalkboard stuff, but he doesn't whip out the chalkboard for doing maps. They're not looking at maps whatsoever or data or anything, but they are talking a lot. And Glenn Beck said something to the effect of, my faith teaches me that this is a consecrated land,
oh
and that
yes,
no
that was
unrighteous person will ever no unrighteous person will ever rule here. The unrighteous will not rule. So Tom Nasser asked, how is Mark Levin a neocon? Like, I don't know. If he was supporting
Ukraine.
Ukraine, he's a neocon in my book. But that's
I'm
the
pretty.
answer.
Wasn't he also pro-vax?
I I assume, like, the list of conservative leaders who were against the Branch Covidian agenda is very small. It's basically Steve Deace and a lot of smaller channels. So that's basically it. So as far as pushing back against the Branch Covidian agenda, was Steve Deace, and everyone else was smaller than him. And then Tucker Carlson later on would be a much bigger role in that. Steve Bannon as well. Okay, Steve Bannon's also huge. He's just not in my sphere. Like, I don't. It's hard to remember people that aren't in your sphere. But ironically, when it comes to this election, Charlie Kirk was actually spot on with a lot of analysis that he made. Like, he's the one that said, hey, this isn't going to be as big as you guys think it's going to be, because he actually anticipated what the polls did not. And that was a higher turnout among Gen Z. So Charlie Kirk, of all people, has actually had very cutting analysis to offer. And I say that because, again, Charlie Kirk, I just thought was kind of a grifter, but the Groiper Wars, which Charlie Kirk lost, have really made him a better person.
Yeah, I mean, like,
Having lost that, he has become a better person. He's
well,
become a
he
better
started
commentator. He's become
doing.
better at this.
He started actually saying, "Oh wow, this social conservatism thing actually matters. You can't just go out there with stale economic messaging on the Democrats and communism and socialism. You know, communism's failed elsewhere. Like that argument doesn't work. You've
So,
convinced everyone." But
yeah, so
now,
as soon as he kind of realized that, hey, what are we trying to conserve? And then again, like you said, I think a lot of that has to do with the summer of love, and sarcastically, I mean that the summer of love and the rise of critical race theory as a political issue, because I do believe that Charlie Kirk, despite the fact that, let's be real, Turning Point USA has been big on promoting tokens,
and gays.
well, tokens as well, but they've been big on that. And, you know, Charlie Kirk actually went, to my knowledge, pretty hard on the issue. And he founded the Falkirk Center at Liberty University,
Yeah, that
which I'm
it's
not
weird
super
thing on
confident
that
in.
is,
They now changed the name of it, I believe.
yeah, TP USA Faith or whatever they call it. I mean, it probably veers more in the Pentecostal charismatic side, which is why I've never really
Taking them
delved into it.
seriously. Yeah. I mean, but hey, if we want to talk about theology, is post millennialism a cope? That's a hot topic for another day, I suppose. But you know, the, the idea that things are always going to get better and better and better, and they're kind of betting on this is an earlier age in the church history. So that's to give them credit, or to be charitable here. They're betting on this is an earlier age in church history, not a later age. I think, I don't know, the idea that Jesus can come back any day means that we're in the later age of church history, but that's just me. So now that we see a lot of issues, let's kind of go race by race, and just talk about certain races that kind of pop up to us. Let's kind of go to Mehmet Oz first in Pennsylvania, because this is one, we've done the video saying, no, it's not really biblical to support Mehmet Oz. He is a snake oil salesman. He was for mutilating children before you knew what mutilating children was. So
The other thing,
for all of that.
The other thing
extremely
is,
pro-abortion and made fun
yes,
of the pro-life movement as late as 2019 or as early as 2019 to say that, that would have been the earliest he would have changed his mind on this issue was 2019. And what changed? He converted to Islam or something.
no, he was speculated for office. That's what changed.
That's what changed. And why run as a Republican in New Jersey when you can run as a Republican in Pennsylvania? It's electorally more actually, or is it Ohio that's the other state that he's involved in? But
I would have thought Jersey. I mean, because all like Pennsylvania doesn't like outsiders, and you got a huge like coalition of states. Like they call it Alabama in the middle. Uh,
and
so
Pedro is saying that Mehmet Oz is less pro-life than Liz Cheney. I don't know what Liz Cheney believes on that. I just know that the Cheneys were never conservative. Like Dick Cheney was pro-gay marriage. People forget that, and he also doesn't know what a quail looks like. But most people don't know what a quail looks like.
I
So,
just know their eggs are tiny.
but
But
that's
yeah,
so.
like Oz, you knew you were getting a liberal, an outsider. I mean, if the guy can't beat a vegetable, he's never going to win. And that was a terrible candidate from day one. I'm glad I was pretty vehemently anti Oz, and just made me want to beat my head into a wall every time I heard Red Eagle politics be like Mehmet Mondays. It's just like no. It's like, no, we shouldn't be propping up a guy that's literally going to be Mitt Romney in the Senate, who's going to just stab his people in the back. And again, that's a downgrade from Pat Toomey, who's the current senator in Pennsylvania. That guy
And
sucks.
Pat Toomey was one of the impeachment senators, right?
Yes. Along with, I'm not sure if he saved Build Back Better. I know Rob Portman in Ohio saved Build Back Better because, Biden's big spending plan, which was responsible for driving inflation, Republicans saved both in the House and the Senate.
Yeah, it be like that. So Mehmet Oz again, Red Eagle politics. To be fair to him, he wanted to meme him into being a good politician because he figured that he was malleable. I get the play that he was going for. I think he was way overselling it, and there's a lot better candidates that same energy could have gone into. So, but I don't see it's hard. But one of the analysis that we should not be making is that we should not be blaming Democrats for voting for a vegetable as a senator. Why are you blaming them for doing that?
Hey,
Because
let's be real.
let's
A sex offender could have beaten Mehmet Oz, and the Democrats are fine voting for sex offenders. They've already done it. 81 million votes.
81 million votes. So that's one way to put it. But I was going to make the same point. Like they voted a vegetable as president of the United States. And you're confused that they voted for a vegetable as a senator. A U.S. senator is the easiest job in the country. You think
Vice
about it. You
president.
get 6 years job security at 6 figures. You're making 6 figures for 6 years, and your job's to be part of the show. It is a show. You're a part of the clown show. That is the United States Senate. That is the easiest job in the world. Even on the Supreme Court, which is a lifetime appointment you can't get fired from, you actually got to do some sort of analysis on, okay, I got to author the opinion of the court. I can't just rely on them to do the work for me. They're going to hate me for it. There's kind of some sort of pressure to not be the lazy one on the court. And then if you're Ketanji Brown Jackson, she just needs to talk all the time. And then, Clarence Thomas is like the super quiet one, but like delivers.
I mean,
But the easiest job in the world is a U.S. senator. The Democrats have no downside to voting for Fetterman because he's going to vote yes on every single one of their issues because the Democrats are a hive mind. He's going to vote yes on every single one of their issues. They have all the positives, and the only blowback they get is that he's a vegetable. They're going to take that
but if he
deal.
dies, I mean, Shapiro will replace him, or I don't know what the protocol is in Pennsylvania, but if they have an appointment, The other thing is it's easier to unite the Democrats in the hive mind in Pennsylvania than the Republicans because you have basically your Philly Republicans who are urban. They're pretty much Massachusetts. Then you have your MAGA country in the middle, and then you might have like your Michigan-ish Rust Belt Republicans over in the West. So you have pretty much three different types of Republicans that form one party in that state. Getting them to
So
unify is extremely difficult. The other thing is you get I mean, I think Oz underperformed Trump in a lot of Western Pennsylvania, and that's why he lost. He outperforms in Philadelphia. He underperforms in West PA because those
so
voters said,
that
"We're
is
not voting
actually
for
a
him."
major uh that's a major question that I have for this is why did the Rust Belt underperform? The rural whites in the Rust Belt did not turn out in 2022. Why is that? This is the same case in Michigan, Wisconsin, and this is also the same case in Pennsylvania, and even a little bit to some extent Ohio. The middle of the country, these Rust Belt states did not turn out the same way that we'd expect them to. And, I guess one of the comments in the chat is this is a midterm. And I agree with that. But to some extent, you don't expect an underperformance percentage wise. You don't expect, you expect the people that voted for Trump to be fired up returning here, right? Why did this group of people uniquely underperform? Whereas the group of people that voted for, say, Herschel Walker, which we'll get to that race in a second, the people that turned out for Kerry Lake, which, again, the people that turned out for in Texas for Greg Abbott, all those people turned out for a midterm. Why did this unique uh, group of people did not turn out? And I don't think this is a cheating issue. This is a turnout issue. Pennsylvania was saying we're going to take a long time to count the ballots, right? They were saying that before ahead of the election. They had the election pretty much counted day one. There's some outstanding, I guess, but they
I
they
mean,
don't need to drag it out for weeks
I mean,
because they know who won.
I mean, Oz is uniquely bad. Keep in mind, this is one of the few candidates, the national apparatus, like he had money. You can't say that about most of the other candidates in that the Republicans were backing of the contentious Senate races. They really only gave money to three of the candidates, and Oz was one of them. He lost with $40 million. Now, if you I mean, you can't. He could have lost with 60 million. I mean, you can't. At the end of the day, he had money and he still lost. I mean, so I think some of these other candidates they didn't have money.
And I'm gonna pull up, the article that you wrote on this subject because if you look at the state, the Democrats outfunded Republicans, and this is for the Senate, the Senate races. And this was true in 2018. I did a lot of coverage of the 2018 election um, because I wrote about politics before I wrote about faith. That's my backstory on this. So I actually understand politics, unlike a lot of people who are in the more theological spheres that try to talk politics. They don't quite know the X's and O's as much. Uh, but obviously, you have Arizona 79 million to 12 million. That is JD Van, or not JD. That is Blake Masters being outspent. Uh, was that?
By Mark Kelly.
Yes, that is what, a 7-1 margin, almost. Georgia 98 million to 37 million. I'm
Now
rounding
again,
down.
I'll say that they actually did fund Herschel Walker. I mean, that's
Herschel
37
Walker
million.
he got the bag. Nevada 52 million to 15 million.
And again,
Underfunded.
Alex Laxalt's a career politician. He's been nationally backed. He's the chosen one. I think his father was in politics, so he's a political dynasty in Nevada. He was also, I think, the AG. So that's a candidate that you would think a career politician would get a lot of money into that race, and if you know, and for Nevada in particular, that's a down ballot implication because if you'd given him like $30 million, you might have even flipped some of them lower house seats because like three of the house seats, you could have had three of the four house seats in Nevada if you had just spent more money. because I mean those races were both within like 2 points or something around that in that range. I mean, you'd throw 10, $20 million more, you would win this race. And Alex Laxalt, I mean, he'd probably be middle of the road, maybe like a Mike Lee, maybe
I would
a
have to
little towards that.
find my analysis from 2018, but I did the same type of analysis. And that's, if I were betting on the 2018 elections, I would have made a lot of money because my analysis was solid. And the reason why my analysis was solid is because I factored in money with polls. Like I didn't just rely on polling. I use money as more of a metric because the Democrats were spending money on who was popular. They were spending money on Beto O'Rourke. They were spending money on, I want to say Sherrod Brown. He got a lot of dough, but the Republicans were spending money where it was winnable. They invested heavily in the state of Florida. Like, so Ron DeSantis was pretty well funded going into
Ron
Florida.
DeSantis, I
Rick
think at
Scott
200.
was extremely well funded going in. They funded Rick Scott and Ron DeSantis in Florida. And to some degree, they sacked some other
I mean, I
more
think
winnable opportunities.
DeSantis had 56 million for his first. I mean, he came in with this in this cycle with $200 million or something ridiculous. Which I mean, again, he had way more than he needed, which
Oh, yeah.
means that
But he used it to help out the down ballot.
yes,
That is the impressive thing about Ron
DeSantis
DeSantis.
delivered, which we probably will get to that later, but you can
So next
clearly
on
see Nevada. If they had just spent more money, you could have increased that margin, and you probably could have increased your down ballot because
New
that's
Hampshire, this is embarrassing. 38
yes.
million to 2 million.
All
Or,
this
and
talk that
rounding
New
down, by the way. But
all
38 million
this
to 2
talk
million.
that New Hampshire's this purple state,
It's
and again,
not purple. They just have a rhino governor.
yeah, but at the end of the day, if you honestly believe that this was a flippable seat, or even if you just wanted to throw, I mean, again, I said at a minimum they should have thrown 12 million at this race, just because even if you don't get a return on investment in this cycle, you might be building the infrastructure for a future cycle. But and again, you do a lot of your New Hampshire primary election in the presidential cycle. So again, they should have invested more in the state. This is a disgrace. And maybe with $12 million, that margin gets
Now,
down to four-ish,
New
4%.
Hampshire, I believe, voted for Bush the first time. Oh, I want to say so. They used to be a red presidential state, or at least they were winnable. But now it's pretty much unwinnable. Although I believe Trump in 2016 came kind of close, but who knows how riggedy rigged that might have been. But North Carolina, we have 33.8 million to 12 million, and the
So
Republicans won that one
yes, so
decisively.
Ted Budd, he was your Trump endorsed Freedom Caucus member in the House. He's a current representative. You think you know, they would chip in a lot of money to protect their own. And there's this idea that North Carolina is trending blue. So you would think if North Carolina is trending blue, let's throw some money at it to keep it red. And they pretty much said no, thank you,
Let's shore up our defense and go on offense, like that typical, military strategy, right?
because this state's being invaded. I mean, you got outspent in a open seat,
Yeah, because a bunch of
and
Marylanders are moving to the Carolinas.
and Ted Budd is a current congressman, so it's not like you kind of already know him.
Or should I say J.D. Greer and Stephen Furtick are taking over the state churches there. So they're just wokeifying everything down there. That'd probably be a better explanation for why the suburbs in North Carolina, and North Carolina is increasingly becoming one giant suburb. But
yeah, I mean, and you
that
see
state's, we got to do better in North Carolina.
yeah,
But
and that 3%, yeah, 3%, but that should have been 5%. That should have been 6%. And the down ballot impact of 3% is that Ted Budd's current seat in Congress, his district is now flipped because they didn't spend enough money. And if you look at the down ballot, Sandy Smith and what's the
wait,
other
Sandy
person?
Smith, he was based, right?
She was based, yes.
Oh,
She, I
I
mean, she
remember that
was,
in 2018 there was a Republican that was ousted in a primary, and it happened in Western North Carolina, and it was based. So they actually ousted an unpopular rhino with a Republican, a real conservative. That was one of the only uh, primary flips, and that's why I stopped paying attention to national primaries because that was just such a um, black pilling experience because people don't do their research for the best candidate. They just don't. And I know you did some of that on Evangelical Dark Web for the
And
primaries, like Mehmet Oz, for
in North
instance.
Carolina, I covered, and yeah, Ted Budd's seat. I mean, you had a guy named Bo Hines running for it, who's like your socially liberal MAGA bro, and he lost again. He was both him and Sandy Smith were outfunded by the Democrats on their opposite side, and they should not be losing these seats. You should be paying money and spending money. And again, this isn't just Mitch McConnell; it also falls on Kevin McCarthy, where that 3.6%, if that was 5%, that has a trickle down effect. They're not spending the money to win these races, and it shows. So I would think, if you want to look at the various avenues of why the red tsunami turned into a red disappointment, you have money, shenanigans, and maybe in some cases you had the abortion issue. I mean, you can't overcome the zeal of women that want to kill their children. So
Okay, so JD Vance, Ohio, that was 47.3 million to 12 million. The JD Vance was outspent.
yeah, I
Now,
mean Tim
this one
Ryan.
I don't begrudge not spending a whole lot of money.
I mean, Tim Ryan is a congressman currently. Well, he will be a former congressman. But again, this one also kind of goes down to the down ballot. Maybe raise a little bit more money for JD Vance, get the down ballot to work
I
because again,
disagree because that's DeWine's job. Like JD Vance, from what I understand, did not campaign that hard. He was up in every single poll. There's never really any doubt he was going to carry this. So Ohio has been trending red. I don't see the need to invest that much money in Ohio. In fact, I would have been pissed if the Republicans invested so much money in Ohio. There's no need to invest that much
I mean,
money in
if
Ohio.
it's not this, if this is not a crime for Mitch McConnell, it's certainly a crime for Kevin McCarthy because you lost 3 House races you could have won in this state, including Steve Chabot, who is a incumbent. So they flipped a seat in Ohio. You lost with I got to read their names. J.R. Majewski. Again, that was he was
Majewski, yeah,
he
that
was
name rings a bell.
a MAGA bro, famous for painting the Trump thing in his yard or something like that. And then you had Madison Giacedio Gilbert, who's like I want to say she's like super hot. She's like Miss Ohio or something like that. She's actually like a beauty pageant. And it's like you couldn't even like get her across the. It's just like you had 2 seats that
And
you had
pretty
3 seats in your down ballot that you should have been spending more money to win, and you couldn't even shore up in Ohio. So yeah, it kind of falls on.
And then we have the earth-shattering 56 million dollars for the Fetterman campaign to $40 million for Mehmet Oz. And all that over $40 million. That is the most in these competitive Senate races that Republicans spent. It was on Mehmet Oz.
Yeah, I mean, this one also might go to. I mean, he might have raised money from like Steve Yost, who's a billionaire out in Pennsylvania. So I mean, you might have had a little bit more like Wall Street connection, but at the end of the day, this was the race they spent money on, and they got a piss poor return on investment.
Yeah, that is a
Versus
terrible return.
if you spent more in Ohio, if you spent more in North Carolina, you would get some of them House races on the down.
Charles says that I saw very few ads for Vance in comparison to Ryan, and again, Vance did
Well,
not campaign that hard.
the
But
funding
nice to
shows
see
that.
you, Charles, in the chat tonight because he was at the retreat with us in New York.
Well, I mean, but again, what are they doing? Advertising in the Browns games, which who's in Cleveland watching the Browns get taken to a Super Bowl, But
Pedro says Mitch McConnell won the Game of Thrones. He didn't fund the ultra MAGA candidates and dumped unbelievable amounts of money into Ron DeSantis to give him the biggest lead possible to coronate for 2024. I don't know how much he has over governor's races, but again, Ron DeSantis had the money. He didn't need Mitch
well,
McConnell's money.
I feel like he won a lot of his money on grassroots, though. Like we shouldn't underestimate the fact that the guy had record money. Like
Yeah, that's not a Mitch
whatever the
McConnell
record
thing in my
was,
mind.
he shattered the record. And people were trying to complain about him taking like $300,000 from Publix in a $56 million election. Well, if the guy has over $120 million to work with, Mitch McConnell giving him $1 million isn't going to affect, even $12 million isn't going to affect it if he just gives him 10% of his take.
And this is the closest election spending was I don't know who the Mandela Barnes in Wisconsin, I believe,
Yeah.
to Ron Johnson, an incumbent
So I mean,
Republican senator.
yeah,
It was
Ron Johnson.
34.5 million to 31.5 million, a $3 million difference, give or take. And that was to hold a seat.
Yeah, so I mean, you have a seat that they act
Actually,
that
some of these
money.
others are to hold a seat as well, but not with an incumbent.
So I mean, yeah, I mean, you can kind of see, when the money is mostly equal, that Ron Johnson was able to prevail, but
In a
how
very
many?
underperforming Wisconsin election cycle. And that's especially disappointing because the Wisconsin Republican Party is actually pretty well organized. They are a comparably well organized party. You look at Scott Walker and his time in Wisconsin, and how he took out the unions, and yeah, that was his thing. You look at the fact that Trump won it. I believe Ron Johnson outperformed Trump in 2016. I could be wrong about that. And then obviously the state has taken a dump since. But you think with the crime as a major issue in Wisconsin, particularly as it relates to the Kenosha riots, the Waukesha Christmas parade massacre, and the sentencing that just happened there, you'd think there would have been more fire in the belly to vote Republican in Wisconsin, but the turnout was not there. What is up with these Midwest states and the turnout not being
Well,
there?
I mean, I've
And
heard bad things
obviously,
on.
Wisconsin's not is one of the most electorally fortified elections states in the country. They're top 6 out of 50, 51 if you want to count DC. But DC doesn't really need to fortify their
Well,
elections.
and the other thing is, I mean, Wisconsin's an odd case where the senator outperformed the governor. Um, as far as like your bigger, like you have Joe Lombardo outperforming Laxalt in Nevada, Kerry Lake outperforming Masters, the same with Kemp and Georgia outperforming Walker. So you have a lot of cases where your top of the ticket outperformed the second on the ticket. So Wisconsin was kind of a reverse, despite all the baggage with Tony Evers.
Yeah. So
And the one race I didn't put on this chart was
Alaska.
Rubio. No, Rubio.
How much did Rubio get?
He had 46 million.
Why on earth does Marco Rubio need 46 million to hold a Senate seat? The guy is an
I don't know
elected
what he
governor.
I don't know what he started with.
Well, he could have had a lot of money left over from running for president that he didn't need.
President, and again, he had 6 years. I mean, 6 years with the first year being 2016. So you had a presidential cycle. He raised money in on the pre. So, and again, he's kind of squishy. So he's a money raising machine. He went against 72 million. So the Democrats were willing to throw money at a loser in Val Demings. And, Republicans can't even do 12 million on New Hampshire.
Yeah, the New Hampshire race, as competitive as that was, could have been a lot more competitive had they put money into it. But I'm not sure how good of a candidate Bolduc was. But again, very pathetic allocation of money. And this is not how it was in 2018. In 2018, the Republicans did a lot better at spending money. They did a lot better. And the Democrats, they knew where they're going to lose. They knew that, I think it was like Heidi Heitkamp or whatever. They knew she was going to lose. They pretty much saw the writing on the wall for Claire McCaskill in Missouri. And that's when Josh Hawley took over. So they knew that they were going to lose certain seats. The Democrats just knew it because the map was not in their favor. But in this race, I'm not sure which seats the Democrats seem oddly confident in their chances. Like they seem pretty confident in Mark Kelly. They were pretty nervous about Raphael Warnock, because they had to trot out a lot of conspiracies. And I'm going to call them conspiracies because if you're bringing in Gloria Allred, you're not serious. This isn't a real issue. It's a fraud when they're bringing in Gloria Allred. Just
I
saying.
mean, the Democrats just flooded the ballots with cash as well as ballots.
So now that we've kind of talked, about the races, a lot of the Senate races, I want to focus on Georgia for a second because you got Brian Kemp who won decisively, and then you got a runoff election happening with Raphael Warnock and Herschel Walker. Now, here's the thing. The character issues that exist for Mehmet Oz, I do not think exist for Herschel Walker. Like, I don't think Herschel Walker was a known quantity. He's a known quantity. This is like quitting on Trump because of the supposed
P-tape or
the tapes.
Fingers.
Yes, something like that. He's very much about grabbing animals that are either cats or beavers or something like that. He's very much in favor of grabbing women. If you were with Trump up until that point, you just have no real standard. Like, the moral calculation on Trump would have been made long before that if you were, a decently ethical human being. And I feel the same way about Herschel Walker. Like, if you thought that Herschel Walker's character was too much of an issue, which I'm not begrudging you for making that calculation at all, but I am going to begrudge if you made that calculation because of the October surprise that they tried to drum up. Because, again, you should have made that calculation long before that moment.
We
already know that Herschel Walker's not a good father. We already knew that.
Yeah, we already knew he wasn't a good father. I mean, I think
you can go on about his vices
mental
for a second.
His mental health claims are dubious. Because let's be real, you had dissociative identity disorder, then you played MMA for a couple bouts in mixed martial arts. Then but no known episodes since. I mean, again, there's a lot of shakiness with his past. Then, of course, the allegation was that he paid for an abortion, which, again, totally believable, given his lifestyle at the time.
But they didn't provide any of the receipts.
Yeah, they didn't provide any of the receipts. They just referenced
a receipt that it was, $800 check or something like that said "get well" or something. Like, they didn't provide the receipts because the people did not want to come on record against them.
Not conclusive, but believable.
Right. But that moral calculation would have already been made. Like, you already knew who Herschel Walker was character-wise. I don't know what this exactly changed.
Yeah, I mean, and then you have, going in, he might have been a little lacking on substance, but he kind of delivered in the debate. So, that was kind of neutralized a bit as far as a concern goes. So, I mean.
But he had money, and.
Yeah, he had money.
The Run Herschel Run message. And he gets to go on to a runoff. I think I'm not sure whether I should be nervous about that or thankful that this goes on to a runoff. But he underperformed Brian Kemp. But
that was expected.
That was extremely expected. But Brian Kemp is a pretty popular governor, and this is one of the trends. This is one of the only trends across the country we saw. The pro-freedom governors outperformed. They won re-election, and it wasn't even close. Ron DeSantis won re-election, wasn't even close. Pro-freedom governor. Brian Kemp, pro-freedom governor, won re-election, was not even close. Kim Reynolds sailed to victory. Christian Noem, no one's talking about that race either because they won their races respectively, and it wasn't even close.
I do think Kemp might have underperformed on the ballot, though.
I mean,
I think he was probably projected to get maybe closer to 54, maybe 55%. So he did kind of underperform expectations. Maybe he turned off a lot of MAGA bros over 2020.
But here's the thing. We're talking about a mighty fortified election stream. Georgia, passed some election laws. And these election laws were so controversial that the Major League Baseball wanted to pull their events from Georgia, from the Atlanta Braves Stadium. They wanted to pull their events. And despite that, Brian Kemp held his ground. He fought, and the Braves won a World Series after that, I believe. And then Brian Kemp went on the cruise for re-election. Marie says accept Whitmer, and I think there's a clarification that I should make is that the pro-lockdown governors also won. The pro-freedom governors were rewarded. The pro-lockdown governors were not punished. There's kind of two things going on at the same time. There was not a pro-freedom candidate that beat a pro-lockdown governor, except maybe coming up in the state of Nevada. You could see that type of activity happen. And back to Georgia, Formosan Black Bear says Georgia has a strong cater organization, maybe Carter. And Andy Stanley is also there. And Andy Stanley was brought in to talk at the Georgia State Assembly. He was like a chaplain for a service. And it was a Rhino senator or Rhino politician that brought him in, which is just completely unsurprising that a Rhino Republican looks up to Andy Stanley. Just, because theologically liberal people generally aren't politically conservative. That's just a fact. Except, maybe there are some exceptions to that because, a lot of people are accidentally theologically liberal, but they're not as theologically liberal as they could be. They might not have a robust theology, but they're not as whack as Andy Stanley because he's hardcore theological liberal, very unhitched. But Brian Kemp stood his ground and he passed some election integrity laws. And that I think is going to be a major factor moving forward in our discussion for 2024. So put a pin on that. We're going to bust out a map for 2024 later in this stream. So moving west, we could talk about Michigan. Tudor Dixon just disappointed. And again, Whitmer was powerful. She was a powerful candidate. She shouldn't be as popular as she is, but she's a witch and she casts a spell on people and they like her or something like that.
Black people in particular.
Oh,
that 6% turnout for Tudor Dixon. I mean, that's like Donald Trump with black women numbers. And that's what she got, including the men. So I mean,
it's really bad.
Absolutely crapped the bed with minorities.
And again, she was an upset. That would have been an upset for her to win. So Gretchen Whitmer winning re-election, as painful as it is to admit, is pretty expected. And the abortion ballot, which you kind of talked about at the beginning of the stream, not surprising either. It's disappointing, but it's not surprising. Michigan would have been a win for the pro-life movement, but we couldn't sustain that win against this because Michigan had a pre-existing ban, which they fought to overturn. I mean, it was us getting a win to make abortion temporarily or potentially illegal in Michigan, but it was not to last because Michigan's a blue state. It is a blue state. We can't forget that. Trump, and we're going to debate whether what he did in 2016 was a runoff, 2016/2020 was a one-off or 1.5 off, or is a real realignment in the Republican Party. So we're going to have that debate in a second. After we go through some of these states. So Wisconsin, again, that was a huge disappointment. It was at Tony Michaels. It was Michaels. And Tim Michaels, he completely underperformed. He should have upset Evers. And again, Evers was a pro-lockdown candidate, but I believe the Wisconsin Supreme Court basically struck down lockdowns. So Wisconsin was relatively free for much of 2020 and 2021. They were relatively free because the Supreme Court of Wisconsin put the kibosh on a lot of Evers' agenda. And I think to some degree that spared Evers. But at the end of the day, the American people are very unforgiving of lockdowns in some capacity. And in some capacities, because there was some mobilization. A lot of people moved to Florida. A lot of people moved out of New York. Lee Zeldin. That's actually he did great there. I don't think we can undersell that. He did a great job. He was always going to be a long shot. You're talking about a one-party state. This is a state that going into this election, the New York Democrats had a super majority in the House, in the state legislature. They had a super majority.
I mean, as far as
They broke
Wisconsin,
that. They broke the super majority.
as far as Wisconsin goes, I mean, it looks like the big difference in that state is men versus women. That's a good example of the masculinization versus feminization.
Yeah, the real
Battling it
political
out.
realignment.
That's Wisconsin. That was essentially the story there, is that women broke hard for Evers. It looks like white women, because the state's pretty much white, 85% white. It's like, England. 59% white men, Evers or Michaels, against 51% white women, and then a lot of the minorities broke hard on Evers, and you don't really see this Hispanic realignment, because that was one of the narratives going in, is that Biden lost the Hispanic vote, and it just does not appear that you see in a lot of these states that Republicans actually performed well with Hispanics. They didn't. DeSantis does, but that's a different.
I mean, how much have we talked about Florida? Because obviously Ron DeSantis crushed it, and he actually made that a red state, and super red. He brought people to vote for the Republican Party, and let's also mention that he did election integrity laws. That was one of the things that Ron DeSantis did do. He did election integrity. He pretty much curbed the power of Broward County.
I mean, he lost.
He created like an election police force or election integrity enforcement as well. You had cameras, people on camera being arrested for voter fraud in Florida. You saw that. So he delivered on that, and that, again, election integrity is job security, or election security is job security. There's a sports metaphor that ball security is job security with running backs. Well, election security is job security. Republicans learn that.
I mean, there wasn't a red wave, and shenanigans, plus Mitch McConnell and Kevin McCarthy not backing their candidates nationwide, but Ron DeSantis delivered his red wave, 4 seats.
He did his job. He did his part.
So what, a quarter, like 20% or something ridiculous of the seats that Republicans flipped are Ron DeSantis. You're welcome. So
that's
because he netted 4, so I don't know what the exact.
I want to say Florida does have some pretty strict mail-in voting requirements, and again, they had their votes counted in one night. Just saying. And so the next state, let's talk about Kansas briefly, because I believe that was a case where a former Republican ran as a Democrat.
And the governor?
Yes, as governor. And that's why their Democrat governor, I believe, won re-election. But Kansas is a very libertine state. They need Jesus down there for sure. It is bleeding Kansas all over again. And yet the MAGA won down ballot. So that's kind of all that's to really talk about with Kansas.
I mean, just lock me down harder, daddy, is kind of, because you have Laura Kelly, who's a lockdown governor. She won by 2%.
Where's that?
What?
Oh, you're talking about Oregon, right?
Kansas.
Kansas? Okay. I'm not sure. And then Oklahoma had some very good down ballot results in Oklahoma, despite the fact that their Republican is a turd governor, who that's just who's kind of held back the pro-life movement a little bit. But Texas, Greg Abbott, I think, did pretty well, all things considered, considering he's not super popular. But again, he's not super unpopular either. If you saw the Texas primary results,
he knows how to play the game. That's for sure. He knows how
to play the game.
He knows how to dangle a shiny object. Obviously,
he knows how to fall in line after Ron DeSantis. Just wait a couple of weeks.
I mean, I guess part of the idea that it's the Hispanic vote flipping was a fluke is Maya Flores losing down in her district.
That was a one-off. She won a special election.
Yeah, and
she won a special election in a district that voted Biden plus 12.
So I mean, people thought
that she was not going to hold that. That would have been a hard hold.
Yeah,
and she already sold out. So I see Maya Flores probably running for a state office next because she can't win where she lives. That's just me.
But you did get Monica Dela Cruz,
And then
a couple districts
I
over, I
can't,
guess.
and Beto O'Rourke has completely flopped for like the third time he's lost an election.
Yeah, and
Pretty
you can
great.
kind of see the disappointment as he recedes to under
Yeah,
44%.
maybe. And what was the last person that ran against Greg Abbott? Man, was it Abortion Barbie that they ran for governor against Greg
Something
Abbott?
like that.
It was Abortion Barbie. That's what Rush Limbaugh called her. And he had to. And I don't. It wasn't Sandra Fluke, which she should not have ever apologized for calling her a slut, but uh, it was Abortion Barbie, I think, is what he called her, and she ran against Greg Abbott, I think, and got crushed. So, moving west, we have Colorado, in which, and Colorado is an interesting state because they ran rhinos. You cannot accuse this of being a MAGA disappointment. The Republicans in Colorado underperformed, but they were rhinos. You're talking about uh, a blue anon candidate for senator completely underperforms, gets blown out of the water. Lauren Boebert is in a tough, heated neck and neck counting currently. I
I
believe
think
Lauren
she's
Boebert has
ahead.
taken the lead now. So she might eke out a narrow victory in a disappointing
Yeah, they have her
showing.
up by little 60 some votes or something. Or yeah, that's maybe
It's tight.
140 or something like that. It looks one.
And I don't want to see her lose, but at the same time, she said some ridiculously, maybe heretical, maybe just extremely errant statements.
Let's just
Uh,
say,
I'm going to be as generous because I can't think of the specific example. So I'm going to say extremely theologically errant statements, and she needs to find a good church that will actually disciple her. We'll leave it at that. But Colorado is a blue state. We just got to accept that it's a blue state. It's
yeah.
been Californicated.
I mean that was one of the seats that Republicans lost in 2020 was the California California seat.
Another thing to point out is Huckabee's daughter won in governor of Arkansas, which was expected when she won the primary, but she was not the best candidate in the primary, as
I
you
mean,
recall.
I thought Dan Washburn was better. Huckabee's gonna be obviously an upgrade from Asa Hutchinson, but
Asa Hutchinson, the fake Christian.
yeah.
Uh,
But I mean, Huckabee kind of just makes you want to beat your head into a wall as well because she literally wrote a whole op-ed in July of 2021 saying, "Please take the jab." Uh,
jab me
so
harder.
yeah, jab me harder in 2021, and that just again in her past, she has no qualifications. She got that seat because of her name recognition, and she worked for Trump. So I mean, you didn't get the best candidate for the job, but you might have someone that'll follow the lead of maybe a
They have a
DeSantis.
really good state legislature in Arkansas,
Yes. So I
so
mean,
that will lead the way
I
because
mean,
they overrode Asa Hutchinson's veto because apparently they only need a simple majority to override a veto. In Arkansas, it's really crazy. And Asa Hutchinson is pro mutilating kids, and they have to override him on that one.
I mean, no
So,
one's really talking about her being a rock star, but I think she could be like a follow the leader, disciple kind of
speaking of rock
governor.
stars, Rand Paul cruised the victory pretty easily. No shocker there. And the liberal media, they hate Rand Paul. Oh, this is a good question, Ray. Which politicians do you think are born again Christians? James Langford is at the top of my list. I can't remember who that is for a second. I don't think that Lauren Boebert's not born again. I think she might be poorly discipled. I'm going to be kind about that. Marjorie Taylor Greene, I might also put in that same category. I'm trying to think. I don't think Ted Cruz is not a Christian, so I would say Ted Cruz is probably a Christian. I just think again he's in the corrupt environment of Washington D.C. I'm trying to think
I
because
mean,
there's a lot of congressmen.
maybe like a Chip Roy,
Chip Roy, yeah, that'd be another example. Congressman out of
Massey.
Texas. I don't know if
maybe.
Thomas
I
Massey
don't
is a
know too
Christian
much.
or
Again,
not.
I don't know too much about these people to really in their personal lives.
Langford is a senator from OK. Well, man, why doesn't Oklahoma have better senators? Ben Sass is kind of like your Mike Pence. Like I would have thought that Ben Sass was a faithful Christian a long time ago, and then he doesn't have it. He's not meant for politics, and maybe that's his thing. He's not meant for politics, but and then Asa Hutchinson ran to MSNBC, and again, he's kind of like Mike Pence. And again, Mike Pence, I don't think is a believer. I just, how do you sell out so many times? Because again, the Bible talks about people who are frauds among us being motivated by money. So they will sell you out. They will sell the gospel out. How has Mike Pence not done that? And then, so naming Christians in the U.S. Senate, very difficult. In the House, it would probably be a lot easier because you got 435 names, and I'm sure there's a lot more going on there, faith wise. Moving west, we were on Texas, Oklahoma. We covered New Mexico. That was a disappointment for me. I really thought the Hispanic realignment would be
Yeah,
more
I mean,
real, and I believe the Republicans lost a Congress seat, a House seat in New Mexico. So we lost a House seat. So that's disappointing. And I thought Ron Chetty was going to win that gubernatorial race. I thought this was the year that a Republican would win the governor seat of New Mexico, and we could start making New Mexico a competitive state once again. They have 5 votes to offer in the Electoral College, and we need them put to use. You know what I'm
and
saying?
again, that's another case of you're not backing your candidates. It's on the down ballot. Odds are I'm willing to bet Vasquez in District 2 had more money than Harrell. I mean, I could be wrong on that, but if I had to, actually, I could probably just look it up right now.
Oh, okay. In the meantime, I'm going to answer this question. What are your thoughts on Trump promoting Kenneth Copeland, Paula White, and Joel Osteen? Now, I don't know about the last one just because I haven't seen him promote Joel Osteen. But Paula White, again, a lot of negative thoughts on that one. And it just goes to show that Trump has no theological discernment. I wrote an article about this over the weekend or going into Monday because I haven't done a whole lot of videos because of this election, because, I figured people are going to watch that instead. So let me take a little breather here. But Kenneth Copeland? Yeah, I covered that. It was cringe. And even Trump looked uncomfortable with how much liberty that Copeland took with the mic after, he had the mic and it's like, okay, give it back now. Give it back now. So Trump did not want to give Kenneth.
I mean, surprisingly, the
He
race
probably won't
was.
give Kenneth Copeland the mic again.
I mean, surprisingly, that House race was equal. But
And
again,
then
at the end of the day, you got to put money into your candidates.
which House race in New
The New
Mexico?
Mexico flip.
I mean, I
But
wanted multiple flips in New Mexico. Trump asked Pratt to pray for him. And again, I think that's because of the church size, because Trump has a tendency to believe that audience size is indicative of how good you are as a pastor. And
yeah,
David Platt is a mega church in his area, and he was just stopping by. It was unplanned, from what I understand. And Brycor, who's been very pro-Trump in the chat, he says the problem, Ray, is that Trump surrounds himself with heretics who claim to be Christian. And yeah, Platt, not Pratt. If I said Pratt, then I was going along with the chat's misspelling. No, Chris Pratt is not a pastor. David Platt is, though, and shouldn't be, by the way. But yeah, Trump does surround himself with heretics because he does not hire the best and only the best. So moving west, Arizona, we've now gotten our way
and
to Arizona.
New Mexico had a. Or wait,
They had a ballot measure of some sort.
do they?
Maybe Montana did as well. So Montana had a Born Alive Protection Act as a ballot measure, and even that failed. It got like 56% rejected a ballot measure to protect post-born babies from botched abortions. I
But
don't
I
know
mean,
why that's a ballot measure, though. That shouldn't
with
be a
New
ballot measure.
Mexico in particular,
I really want New Mexico to become a Republican state. I really want them to be red. I'm not sure if I would ever live there because I'm not into turquoise, or anything like that, but uh okay, so it's all good. It's all good. Misspelling Pratt. I get it, or Platt, but with Pratt. Now, just call it an Asian accent or something, and we'll move on from this. But so Arizona is where we get a lot of activity, and Arizona they're taking a break. They need a breather. They're gonna take a break, and I guess we'll have some memes because we're gonna do meme review tonight. And Arizona just doesn't, they got to take a break. But here's the thing. Here's the white pill here is that the same thing happened in the primary election. They just took a break. They don't want to count the votes. They're too lazy to do it. They just take a break because they're really fortified there. It is a mighty fortified election in Arizona. Going back to the name of the stream, and they took a break. But the remaining votes, I believe, are mostly election day votes. And those votes so far have skewed so heavily Republican. That is why Carrie Lake I believe she's going to win. But just as important as Carrie Lake winning is the voter ID ballot measure in Arizona, which is performing about the same as Carrie Lake.
Yeah, I mean,
so
it's very much in line. It's 49.2, and I think she's 49.3.
So if Carrie Lake wins, presumably this ballot measure on voter ID will also win, and the election integrity of Arizona will be solidified. And that'll be great. That'll be huge for your 2024 implications, which we're going to talk about 2024 because, we got a lot to discuss in this stream tonight. So that's huge. And the question is, does Blake Masters ride the coattails hard enough? And I'm still optimistic.
I don't see it at this point. I feel very, maybe I'm just black pilled, and yeah, I'm seeing her lead kind of escalate to 26,000, and there's about 539 left.
Whose lead?
Hobbs.
Wait, okay. I think most of the votes remaining are election day votes, and those will skew so heavily. Those might break 70-30 in favor of Lake. And if Blake Masters can just get, if he can get like 2/3, if he can get like 62% of that, then he should cruise to victory as well. So again, Blake Masters should have been more funded.
Yeah, I mean that's a clear example of you got to fund your candidates. And
have you ever seen a channel called Free the States? As a YouTube channel, no. I'm familiar with the website organization, and I believe I'm Twitter buddies with one of their writers as well. So I'm very familiar with Free the States, and they're great. Moving west, Nevada had some really good candidates, and the Democrat infrastructure in Nevada appears to be falling apart.
I mean,
it is long gone are the days of Harry Reid. And I think Republicans, again, working class messaging appeals to these people. They brought in pros.
Been a case where economic messaging actually won the day, given that Nevada is very tourist driven. So you had a huge, economic collapse.
Those Republicans are currently in the lead.
Yeah. I mean,
what you really wanted to see was Clark County, which is where Las Vegas is, a very narrow gap in Clark County. If Lombardo and Laxalt can keep it tight in Clark County, they don't have to win Clark County, but they got to keep it close. Like they got to win within the spread. You know what I'm saying? In a football spread, they got to win this. Or lose within the spread, or win Clark County, and they win the state. That's basically how it works because Las Vegas is basically the state of Nevada. For all intents and purposes.
But again, that's your Mitch McConnell impact right there.
So Oregon's the next state I want to talk about because that's a state where you had a 3-way split for governor. But let's be real, the Democrats saw that they were going to lose. They saw the writing on the wall, and they're a hive mind. We talked about that with Pennsylvania. They don't care about nominating a vegetable because a vegetable is part of the hive. and the vegetable is going to do what the hive wants. So the same thing happened in Oregon. They entertained a third-party candidate that was polling above 10%, was polling 15, maybe even 18% as a third party. They saw that this meant that a Republican was going to get elected in Oregon, and they said, "We're out of here. Let's unite. Let's stop the folly, and let's come home to the hive." And the Democrats rallied around. Was it Kate Brown or Kelly or something?
No, it looks like Tina Kotek.
Okay, so they rallied
It's
around the
not.
Democrat candidate and just crushed it, and delivered a huge disappointment to the Republicans there. So that happened, and
Well,
that's
the
not
other thing.
surprising because they're a hive mind. Democrats are a hive mind.
So Oregon, I mean, if you're in Oregon, you got to pack up your bags and leave. They just
Or
increased
start
gun.
a state. Yeah, they passed a gun.
They passed gun reform, and they passed abortion. So those two ballot measures outperform the governor.
Or you got to start your East Oregon secession movement. That is also acceptable. So that,
Yeah,
I would start there. If that doesn't succeed, maybe no, I'm not going to suggest.
succession movement, kind of like a Lexington and Concord succession movement. Have a giant
Start out with West Virginia.
have an
Look at them.
ammunition silo somewhere, and just hope that they send
Try
their
to
dogs
take it.
to get it.
Yeah,
Lexington and Concord. Read a history book. That's what
yes.
you
So
guys need out in Oregon. And
yeah,
then
but
you guys
look at West
defend your.
Virginia as your inspiration because they should do a secession movement. So that's my advice
Otherwise,
for those
pack
in
up and
Oregon.
leave,
Yeah,
because I
yeah.
mean that's
Just
a
move to
lost
Idaho,
cause.
reinforce Moscow, Idaho. Doug Wilson needs your backup because they can't win town elections there. So next state is California. Anything out of California that's interesting?
I can't say I followed California at all.
Gavin Newsom cruised to victory, unsurprisingly.
Yeah, I mean he passed his recall.
I mean,
pretty
he wasn't running
handily.
against Larry Elder this time.
I mean, let me just look at the House to see if there's anything interesting there. I mean,
Young Kim might have kept her seat. And meanwhile, Alaska is the last state worth talking about. And Alaska looks like the Republicans will hold the governorship there. But Murkowski, in my opinion, is going to remain a senator in the United States. I don't see the ranked choice voting breaking for Shabaka.
yeah, I mean, young Kim cruised. Calvert Steele.
So, your thoughts on the Alaska situation?
I mean, yeah, ranked choice voting. I mean, who needs shenanigans when you got ranked choice voting? I mean, because the Democrats will just have Murkowski as number 2 because she'll vote for all the same spending bills. And
Formosan Black Bear says that they removed the sheriff that was friendly with Grace Community Church. Unshocking. Again, I think California is one of those states you should just get out.
I mean, yeah, you want.
I'm in Maryland, I'm looking for relocation mistresses. So if
I mean, you're in California, you're already getting raked over the coals on taxes, so you might as well leave. I mean,
only 30%, 37% of Maryland are willing to vote for a conservative like me. So,
and if you got enough equity in your house, you don't need to worry as much about the interest rates being 7% for a fixed 30-year fixed. So you got options in California, not so much for Maryland, because if you hop south of the river, real estate's a little bit higher. And
so we've talked about this, and I think we've covered the election, the results as of now. The Republicans aren't looking at more than 230 seats in the House. I was predicting the Republicans would get around 246, 244 ish House seats, and I thought that they would get 53 senators. This would not include New Hampshire. I thought Oz would win, though. Not that I would have supported him, but I thought he was going to win because of the vegetable factor. But I really shouldn't be surprised that Democrats would vote for a vegetable, as I've discussed a little ad nauseum. So let's talk about the Trump-DeSantis backlash. This is going to get a little heated, but Trump versus DeSantis, and I put the subheading as Trump got a little SDE. which is small DeSantis energy, if you know what I'm saying. So there's been a lot of murmurs, and Trump is just there's just no other way to point this out. These are some beta statements that he is making. I'm gonna find my Gab on this and pull it up because obviously I just did not have that ready.
Now,
Did I really?
I'll let you do that. If this was me a week ago at this time, I would have been high on Trump, saying, he delivers. You get this red tsunami that's primed for Trump going into a 2024 cycle. His stock would be very high coming out of this. It's almost a disappointment because, yeah, even though you had all these other factors working against him, Trump
So
became much of the story going into the primary cycle.
so Trump has made a lot of is making absolute diss tracks on DeSantis out in the wide open and for no provocation. Let's be real, there is no provocation for uh, the SDE statements like this. And this is just one statement now that now that the election in Florida is over and everything went quite well, shouldn't it be said that in 2020 I got 1.1 million more votes in Florida than Ron D got this year, 5.7 million to 4.6 million. Just asking. That's a post I presume on Truth Social, and this is just such a bad comparison. This is a midterm election, so the turnout's not going to be as high. Second of all, you won Florida in large part because of the election integrity that Ron DeSantis helped implement. Like he maintained that, and you grew in Florida in part because of that. You did not have Broward County playing Broward County games because of Ron DeSantis, and you should be thankful for that. Otherwise, this is unprovoked. This is complete jealousy and man-childness. There's not a good reason for this. What is the innocent explanation for this tweet?
Insecurity. Or the
That's
two
not an
more
innocent.
years. 2 more
Yeah, the 2 more
years.
years chanting. Who's ever heard a 2 more years chant after someone won election for a 4-year term? That doesn't happen. And earlier today, there's also, I'm going to pull up that tweet. And this was a statement that Donald Trump put out. So I'm going to pull it up right now. This is a statement that he put out earlier tonight. So I don't know if you can read that, but Trump goes after Fox News and much of the rest of the media for promoting Ron DeSantis. But here's what he says. It's just completely ironic. He calls Ron DeSantis an average Republican governor, which is nonsense. In which Governor Ron Sanctimonious, an average Republican governor with a great public relations, who didn't have to close up his state, but did, unlike other Republican governors whose overall numbers for a Republican were just average, middle of the pack, including COVID.
Okay, can we
And who
just
has an
pause?
average.
Can we just pause right there
Let's pause on the COVID part.
on the great gaslight of Donald J. Trump, who bashed Brian Kemp for opening up his state in April and wants to have the balls to call out DeSantis for locking down like a semi lockdown or
I thought
whatever.
the bashing of Brian Kemp happened in May, but let's not remember that he turned 15 days to slow the spread to 30 days.
Like, bro, this is the same thing as Hochul pretending that how many Democrats were saying, "Oh, this is Charlie Crist." I mean, literally, Ron DeSantis dealt with this with Charlie Crist, trying to slap him for locking down the state. I mean, come on, and Ron DeSantis said the worst thing he ever did was listen to Fauci.
And Ron DeSantis actually, here's where I give grace to Ron DeSantis. He repented. He publicly repented of lockdowns. No other governor has.
Like, this is COVID
None.
amnesty. We want COVID amnesty, except
I'm willing to extend COVID amnesty to the first two politicians that repent. The first two, because the first person to do it is brave. The first follower of the person to do it is brave. The second is not brave. So there is no bravery in being the third person or the second follower. There's no bravery in that. So the next part that he says is who has the advantage of sunshine, all caps, where people from badly run states up north, he capitalizes north, only the south gets capitalized, would go no matter who the governor was, just like I did. And, he did move south, which was a strategically wise decision of Trump because, I'd rather be charged down south than up north. In terms of fighting the courts, would much rather not do that in New York or DC. So he goes on to diss Ron DeSantis in 2018. But here's the thing. And this is one of the points that I make in the only article that I've really written on the election. And that was Ron DeSantis has been criticized by people like Red Eagle Politics, by people like,
A
the
lot of your
Zoomers,
MAGA bros,
a lot
Zoomer
of your
MAGA
MAGA
bros,
bros,
are going after DeSantis.
they go after DeSantis. That statement was also mirrored on Trump's official Troops social account, so it was not faked, from what I've seen. The Ron DeSantis has been criticized for not being an election overperformer. Well, that criticism of Ron DeSantis is out of the water now.
And for the record,
And
he outperformed Marco Rubio by about 2%.
and Marco Rubio, extremely electable. He is election candy. Like, that's who Marco Rubio is, extremely electable. And that was his sales pitch for the sales pitch of Marco Rubio in 2016 was he's electable. And obviously, electable has many different meanings. Trump turned out to be very electable. So I want to I kind of want to focus on 2024 for a second here, because this is a great way to frame the whole Trump versus DeSantis debate, because we need to have this debate. Trump has already launched several. This is like the fourth attack that Trump has launched against Ron DeSantis, unprovoked. And this isn't going to stop. And we're going to have a very ugly primary season because Ron DeSantis is going to run. And I think he would be a fool not to run if he ever wants to be president. Now, if Ron DeSantis has no presidential aspirations, then he doesn't need to run. But if Ron DeSantis wants to be president, he needs to run in 2024 and he needs to beat Trump.
And he's got the
because
cash.
in 2028, he has the cash. He has the popularity. This is his moment. He cannot wait his turn and think that it's going to happen in 2028. He's going to miss the boat. Mike Huckabee is not president for a reason. Also because he did a very stupid thing, and I'm going to skip 2012 and come back in 2016. Dumb move if you wanted to be president ever. So Donald, this is an interesting note to bring up, is Donald Trump betrayed Jeff Sessions and Mo Brooks. The J in Donald J. Trump stands for Judas. And I don't know. Yeah, you're right about the Mo Brooks part. Jeff Sessions, I think, betrayed Donald Trump.
I mean, let's
in my
be real.
opinion. Jeff Sessions was a complete paperweight as attorney general. He should have left Jeff Sessions in the Senate because he was a good senator.
I mean, you don't take a senator and throw him into office.
Unless you're going to do, maybe you can, because attorney general is a powerful position. Merrick Garland certainly knows that.
But I mean, Jeff Sessions wasn't willing to wield the power.
He wasn't willing to wield the power.
And again, the FBI, again, goes back to Trump. All this talk that, the system's against him and him draining the swamp, he's the only one. He put Christopher Wray, head of the FBI, in his current office right now. So, but I mean, Sessions wasn't exactly draining the swamp of James Comey and all that.
I'm trying to figure out whether I need to do the So let's pull up the map, because I think DeSantis is actually a much stronger candidate for 2020, and here's why. We're going to pull up.
So you're saying Trump's a stronger candidate?
No, Trump is a weaker candidate for 2020.
2024?
2024, sorry. So this is the map. So, man, let me actually zoom that in a little bit because this is some weak zoom in action. Does that help at all? So
I'm
it's
fine.
currently 269 to 269 for the Electoral College. This is the current. There's two underlying assumptions here, and that is the Republicans will win Nevada and the Republicans will win Arizona here in 2022. Underlying assumptions, and I think both of those are extremely possible. That doesn't necessitate Kerry Lake wins, but it necessitates. It does necessitate that Kerry Lake wins. It doesn't necessitate that Blake Masters wins. I got that backwards. And it also necessitates that ballot measure on voter ID passes, because I think that voter ID law in Arizona will make Arizona a red state in 2024. Change my mind, because this is your current map. Because I do not think we will win Wisconsin, Michigan, or Pennsylvania. I think those states are. I think. So this is what we need to look at. This is the math we need to look at.
Well,
What are the states we can win in 2024?
if you
And
go
what
back,
are the states where the elections are so fortified, a mighty fortified election in our state? And which states have a mighty fortified election? Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin.
well, turn Nevada blue for a second.
And the Republicans will go back to boom.
So this was the Hillary Clinton plan right here. Obviously, she believed that she was going to win. She puts Tim Kaine as her vice president nominee
So she
to
can win
secure
Florida or
no
Virginia.
Virginia
Virginia.
because she didn't think Trump would win PA, Michigan, Wisconsin, and obviously she didn't think he would win Florida and Arizona. So this is the Hillary Clinton road to victory that didn't happen. So the traditional plan was you had to win Florida, North Carolina, Virginia, Ohio. That was the old. That was the old Bush Obama. That was their map. That was their road path.
Yeah, because
So
this is a blue wall up here. So let's actually turn that red for a second. This is the Trump plan.
no, he had Arizona in 16.
Yeah, he had Arizona in 2016. So this is the Trump plan, right? Does this look achievable in 2024?
And I would say no, a hard no.
Does anyone think that? And let me know if you're in the chat. Do you think that this is an achievable map in 2024? This is 297 to 241.
Well, he had Georgia or in.
Sorry, I should have Georgia as well. Let me add Georgia. And 313 to 225. Is this an achievable map? And can Trump achieve this? Because I don't think the answer is yes. I think the answer is a hard no. He cannot achieve this. I do not think he's winning Michigan again. I do not think he's winning Pennsylvania again. I believe, Trump won Pennsylvania, certainly in 2016 and beyond. But again, Pennsylvania literally said that we're going to take weeks to count our election here in 2022 and then did not. Strange, right? Because they didn't need to. Why didn't they need to?
I certainly recall in 2016, Pennsylvania was one of the shockers on election night, not after.
I think if Trump's the nominee in 2024, that's the best we can do.
I think that is Georgia. You think Georgia's loss? I mean, it doesn't matter, but
loss for Trump, yes. You pick fights with the governor, who's very popular there. Scott Walker will still have some say. Like, what say did he have in 2020? I mean, again, this has more to do with election integrity versus election fortification.
Well, I mean, is Scott Walker still forced in Wisconsin? Because I think isn't he Beltway now? Like,
no idea.
I thought he works. He's in the Beltway.
The key issue here is election fortification versus election integrity. I think Georgia has election Well, Georgia has election integrity. Maybe we can flip Georgia back and say that this is a factor, but
It still doesn't change the map. And
it makes
well,
it 269 to 269. Uh, but who knows? Because again, Nevada, we don't have election integrity yet, so we are being hopeful there. But even if we want to give Nevada, which Trump has never won, so actually we really shouldn't give him Nevada. He's never won Nevada, or he didn't win it in 2016. If he repeats his, like, this is the election integrity path to Trump. I do not think he's winning the Rust Belt, or other than Ohio and Indiana. I do not think he's breaking this northern wall here. He's not breaking it. I don't think so. And I'm eager to see some debate over that because we need to have these debates now. This is the time to have these debates.
yeah, I would think Wisconsin's the weak link, but
But neither would DeSantis. This is where I would disagree. I think DeSantis has a stronger path to victory in 2024 with the Electoral
well,
College.
for starters, Nevada.
I think Nevada goes
That's in play.
So let me get the DeSantis map. DeSantis is not going to crack this wall here. I don't think he's going to win Wisconsin, Michigan, or Pennsylvania. These were states that Trump won. These are states and voters that he appealed to uniquely. And they did not turn out. The same people that were MAGA in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, or specifically Michigan and Pennsylvania, did not MAGA for Tudor Dixon and Doug Mastriano, Mehmet Oz, which I don't blame them. And John James finally won. So DeSantis, I think the map looks a little different.
Well, he could put Virginia in play.
I was going to get there, but here we are at 269 to 269, election integrity path with DeSantis. 269 to 269, Republicans currently control the House, but correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it's the incoming delegation that determines the president, and they vote by state delegation, which would basically be a reforming of the Electoral College in a sense in the House. And I believe the Republicans would still win that because you're reforming the Electoral College. And the Republicans could have more congressmen in a state like Virginia or Wisconsin or maybe Pennsylvania. I don't know, but it would depend on how many Republicans versus Democrats are in each of these states in Congress. So this is the point that I'm making. I think that DeSantis, this is his minimum, I think. DeSantis does not have broad support nationwide. He will be called a Nazi and a homophobe and everything else. Why? Because there's an R next to his name. And you're right. Because he has an R next to his name, he will be called all those things. So was Trump in 2016. It did not stop him from winning.
No,
I think
Romney
the biggest
before. I mean,
Romney, McCain.
Like, no, they're not going to call Trump DeSantis a Nazi. They're going to call him an anti-Semite. That's the route they're going to go because that's the route they're shifting to right now. If you
and I'm really betting on that one district in Maine, this Maine 2nd congressional district. I'm really betting on that one, but I think this is the floor for DeSantis, and I do think that DeSantis does have nationwide support, and because here's what I think DeSantis can do. I think he puts Virginia back in play.
Virginia has a lot of Hispanics.
What was the sales pitch for the Democrats to oppose Glenn Youngkin? The Democrats ran campaign ads for Glenn Youngkin. Why? Because they said that he was a Ron DeSantis of Virginia. They said he was going to Ron DeSantis Virginia. And maybe they also call him the Donald Trump of Virginia as well. But I think they attacked him basically comparing him to Ron DeSantis, despite the fact that Glenn Youngkin goes to a woke church. This guy is theologically liberal. He's woke. Glenn Youngkin is woke.
Well,
but he's an opportunist. He's malleable.
Yeah, but Virginia has a Latino community, and I'm not saying Florida's communities would translate nationwide, but you might get a little bit rubbing off. He got 58% of the Hispanic vote in Florida. And yeah, you got a disproportionate Cuban population, but 58%.
Venezuelans are also pro-Republican, I believe.
And then you had
also
13
big in Florida.
13% black, which again, if the Republicans can get 13% black vote nationwide, they're winning handily. And the problem is, that's not, you're probably not going to get that in a Michigan, but you might get 10, maybe.
Yeah, I think with DeSantis,
I mean,
Virginia's in play because, again, where are many of the Republicans who would not vote for Trump? Where do many of those people live? And I'm talking about like the conservatives. They live in DC Beltway area. I think DeSantis does a lot better in the suburbs of Fairfax County and Loudoun County. That's a county, right? Not a city. He does a lot. Yeah, that's the one with the embarrassing school council meetings, the national attention. So I think
DeSantis didn't crap
DeSantis
the
puts
bed with
Virginia back in play. He did?
He did not. Like some
He
of
did
these
not.
others.
Okay.
It was only 54% against him.
So here we are back to talking about, BDE, big DeSantis energy here.
And only 7% of Florida's voting is Cuban to just, make sure that's out in the open as far as the disclaimer goes.
So, this is what you're not going to get at most like overtly Christian channels, is this type of an election analysis. But this is the analysis we need. Because DeSantis has a pathway to victory without replicating what Trump did in 2016, because I don't think you can replicate that, because they're wise to it now. They fortified those elections in Pennsylvania, in Michigan, in Wisconsin. They're fortifying them.
And maybe
they don't want Trump to happen again.
Maybe he cracks one of them.
Maybe. I mean, I'm trying to do a floor analysis for DeSantis. We did the floor, which was 269 to 269. In which case the Republicans would win. I think the Republicans win if it's 269 to 269. Because they would have if Trump got 269, but he didn't. And, I believe Trump was screwed. I do. But we have to elect a president that has a pathway to victory that is not screwed. We don't want to go into the same trap, because they've laid a trap there. We don't want to go into the same trap. So, Ron DeSantis easily wins Florida. I think he wins Georgia because he's more popular with women. We don't have to win women, but we can't lose them 60 to 40. We can't lose women 60 to 40 like that. We got to do a little bit better with women, because that's where the political realignment is. Those who support masculinity and femininity, and those who don't. And those who
there's also the
femininity and androgyny. We need to.
There's also
we need a real alpha male to make the beta males fall in line.
Well, there's also just the idea that a lot of these alpha males that are like liberal will back DeSantis, and this is where you get this Elon Musk, like classical liberal.
Joe Rogan.
They're going to back DeSantis because he's an alpha male. They're sharks. They hang out with other sharks. They're not hanging. Again, I said this on the one live stream. They don't hang out with octopuses. They hang out with sharks.
You were on my live stream.
Yeah, I said that.
Other people. So DeSantis has a charisma of a 2x4. He won't match a Trump rally enthusiasm. And here's what I say to that: he doesn't have to.
I don't even.
Trump was unique.
I think DeSantis has his own style. He knows how to own the press, but at the same time, he actually delivers results. This is a results-oriented business, not a can you draw crowd-oriented business.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if you're, the New York Yankees can't sell out a stadium, but they can make it deep into the playoffs. That's not the best example, but does that make sense? Consistently playoff-bound franchise. So consistently good franchise, rich franchise, doesn't need to sell out a crowd, but they can make the playoffs. They can deliver some sort of season results.
Donald Trump is Drew Bledsoe, and you got Tom Brady and Ron DeSantis on the bench playing backup.
Because they can't run on the same ticket. So if anyone's suggesting that they have a unity ticket with Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis, that's constitutionally not valid. They come from the same state. You can't have. I believe the Constitution forbids the president and vice president coming from the same state.
And keep in
So,
mind, I think
and Donald Trump is not going to change his residence, presumably to New York, so he can run as a Republican with
keep in mind,
a vice president in Ron DeSantis. He's not going to do that.
Like a DeSantis and Kim Reynolds ticket would help him out in that Rust Belt.
You think the DeSantis, Kim Reynolds, Rust Belt? I think DeSantis should get Winsome Sears as a VP candidate to secure up Virginia.
Okay, yeah.
So let me get the DeSantis max, and let's actually. That's the maximum. Actually, I believe that is the max that DeSantis can do. 335 to 203. That's a rout. That's a blowout. Republicans aren't going to win Minnesota. New Hampshire is really a stretch, but a stretch it is. And nothing on the West Coast. You know, your standard map. That's the max. But going back to the min, which was
you flipped New Mexico.
I did flip New Mexico. I think, yeah, 269 to 269. I think that's his floor. I think Trump's floor is 236.
Oh,
this is Trump's.
What about North Carolina?
No, I don't think he loses.
You don't think he loses that? And even
no, I don't. This is Trump's floor. DeSantis's floor is 269. Trump's floor is 236. This is numbers here.
I mean, at the end of the
day, you need money to win like the Yankees, not win against the Yankees.
Well, DeSantis can get money. That's not a.
DeSantis has money.
No. In the words of Donald Trump, it's not a problem. So.
Not a problem, and he would have more money in a primary than I think Donald Trump would.
And again,
so this is going to be an ugly primary. This is not going to be a happy-go-lucky primary. This is going to be an ugly primary. It'll make Ted Cruz and Donald Trump look like
best friends.
Yeah. Oh, lying Ted, not lying Ted. So
well, I will say, if DeSantis wants to get the early jump on Trump, he has to tackle that abortion issue because Florida's 15-week ban is not good enough. It's weak sauce. You got a bunch of
It's not good enough, but it's good enough in the primary.
You think that'll?
You can say that it's not good enough. It's morally not good enough for me. I get that.
I think if he does
not good enough,
gets a victory, that's a huge boon in his direction, especially when you have a lot of, like, I won't say single issue voters on the abortion thing, where Trump's abortion record is objectively better than DeSantis's.
You could say that Trump's abortion record is objectively better. I would agree with that. But here's the thing. That's not enough. It's not objectively better enough to be a deciding factor. I don't think it's objectively better enough to be a deciding factor in a single issue lane. And when you have, the people that are anti-woke, DeSantis wins that. The younger Republicans, DeSantis wins that. I think, people like John Doyle and Red Eagle Politics are in the minority, generationally speaking.
But are they in the minority as a first choice or?
I think they're as a first choice. I would still vote for Trump in 2024. Don't get me wrong. I'm not a rhino here. But the idea that, we shouldn't have Trump be challenged, I think is wrong. Because if Trump still has it, then he can take on a challenger. But now, if Trump is putting out pathetic pot shots at Ron DeSantis now, it's not going to get better. He's actually, it's sad to see, actually. This is sad to see. And I don't want to be like, I know I've, just to put the caption back on there, I know I joke about Trump having SDE right now, small DeSantis energy, but you don't want to see him go out like this. You don't want to see that. I don't want to see that. So
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, it is results oriented. DeSantis delivered his red wave on the down ballot. Trump failed nationwide. I mean, I look at this midterm election. It was not the tsunami that was promised. It underperformed. If I'm looking at the team, I'm blowing up the team and restarting from scratch.
I don't
You
think you
know,
need to blow up the team.
well, I'm just saying
So
Trump's the quarterback, head coach, and GM. They didn't win the Super
this is
Bowl. It's time
like,
to blow it up.
okay, this is actually closer to say the Baltimore Ravens when Joe Flacco and John Harbaugh took over the team. It was like 2 years ago that was a playoff team, and then they just had a really bad season because who's their quarterback? Kyle Bowler, maybe. I forget who was a quarterback that season, but
Before,
yeah, before Joe Flacco was Kyle Bowler, right? So they had him and Brian Billick as head coach, and but before that they were in the playoffs. They had a first round bye week against the Indianapolis Colts, who then went on to win the Super Bowl, I believe, that year. And then Joe Flacco, whatever, they get on the Ravens. They go to the AFC Championship that season. Like, they were already a good team. You don't need to blow up the entire team. You just need to actually reorganize the team. And what we saw with the red wave in 2022 is that the Republican organizations that were extremely well organized did exceedingly well. Republicans did well in New York. They did well in Florida. They did well in Arizona, pending. But if Kerry Lake wins and that ballot measure on voter ID wins, that's a victory. I don't care about the Senate, even though Blake Masters was an excellent candidate. The states where Republicans underperformed, I think the Republican infrastructure might be falling apart in Wisconsin, Michigan for sure, and Pennsylvania, no doubt.
oh, Pennsylvania, you can't get a unifying figure
Oh, and then
in
Nevada. I
there.
forgot to say Nevada on the good column. But the Republican Party and Republicans in general need a hierarchical movement. We are a hierarchical people. We need a hierarchy. And that's sad because a movement on small government and self-governance shouldn't rely on a top-down hierarchy, but we do. That's why Trump was a champion for us. He was
No,
a
one.
champion of a movement. He did not start the movement or create the movement. He championed a movement. And this is a type of movement that needs a champion.
Oh, one of the
It
things
just
I said
does.
before this is, with SDE is that, you know, Donald Trump is Saul to
And
Ron
Ron DeSantis is
DeSantis is
David.
David. That Saul became so consumed with David that he pretty much collapsed. I mean, obviously he tried to usurp the priesthood in Israel, so you had a lot of issues there, but he essentially became a self-fulfilling prophecy versus David, who was, he's not touching the Lord's anointed, so to speak. And, right now DeSantis is laying low.
He's not. He's laying low. He's waiting for his time. But Donald Trump is at the point where, to use your analogy and continue on with it, he's about to talk to the medium. And that's bad news bears. He's talking to the medium before trying to start a battle here. That's what Donald Trump is doing, and I don't want to see it. Let's see. Trump was against the people on the Wuhan SARS deception, never lifted a finger to protect the nation, and so we are forced to distrust him entirely now. It's Nicholas,
Yeah,
proclaimer.
and
And
I'm
he tries to
probably
gaslight Ron DeSantis on that issue. He's going to fail miserably in a primary debate if he tries that.
now
Charlie Crist tried that and failed.
now
Donald
you're gonna
Trump might
have,
do even
like,
worse.
I'm probably gonna do the article on this one, rebutting like the John Doyles of the world. But yeah, they're gonna try to argue, oh,
And I
Trump
love
is
John Doyle, and you got me into
yeah,
John
I
Doyle.
like him, but like Trump is uniquely qualified. He's the hero. Like they imagine him as the Julius Caesar. They imagine him as the hero and the protagonist in this story. They view
And
it as
again,
Trump's story.
going
But
back to the whole point that I made about we are a hierarchical cultural movement. We need a champion. Julius Caesar was that again. This kind of goes back to the Caesarian days because he was a populist guy. It
he
was
was
a Latin word,
populist. He was rich, but kind of
and
on the outskirts of the
he
rich.
delivered results. And that's why the people loved him. Caesar's the hero of the story.
But I mean,
And Brutus is the villain.
Augustus, his heir, did greater things. So,
Exactly. Even though Caesar is arguably the greatest general of all time, uh, he's in that conversation. The Battle of Pharsalus is just exceeding genius, and I don't know how he won that. And probably he would say neither does he, because again, Pompey Magnus was in a much better position, didn't make a mistake in that battle, but lost. But we are a movement that needs a champion, and Ron DeSantis, I think, is that champion moving forward.
and again, I think most MAGA bros can get behind DeSantis. I don't buy the Trump is going to sully the base and turn them against it. That might apply in like a one of these Rust Belts, but
that might apply in one of the Rust Belts. But guess what? The voters who uniquely responded to Trump. Let's fix the map here. The voters that uniquely responded to Trump in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, they did not uniquely respond to decent Republican candidates. They didn't show up. So here's the problem. Why are we spending so much attention and time on the least reliable voters? These are good voters, or good votes. You got working class white people, rural whites, but they did not show up this election. They're not the most reliable voters. Trump did a great job winning these people over. And at great cost, he turned off many reliable Republican voters. Now, many of these reliable Republican voters, they were not really Republicans. They were among us, but they were not of us. Let's just go back to Trump's ceiling here. So, this is Trump's ceiling, right? Maybe New Hampshire, if we want to go ultra ceiling. So that's Trump's ceiling. And he did, he could get rural whites, people who were disaffected Democrats, over to the Republican Party. One thing he didn't necessarily do is he didn't necessarily make them super conservative. That's just a fact. He didn't necessarily do that. Another thing is he didn't make them reliable votes. And that showed in 2022. Those people did not turn out enough in 2022. And that's a disappointment. But with Ron DeSantis, we could win back the most reliable Republican votes that were disaffected by Trump and maybe not lose entirely the uniquely Trump voters. We could get some of them, the ones that were onboarded into the movement, but we would have a better class of reliable votes for future elections. What do you think about my hypothesis?
Well, yeah, I mean, starting with the Hispanics, I mean, I think DeSantis could actually make that realignment happen because I don't think you really saw it in this cycle as far as the Hispanic.
We saw it in 2020 with Donald Trump, but maybe those were presidential election voters rather than midterm election voters.
And that might just be it. But I mean, not that Hispanics are a big deal in Michigan, but I don't know what Tudor Dixon's message to Hispanics was. And obviously, you need someone that can maybe breach the gap with black people. And DeSantis, he has alpha male energy. He can do that with the black men. He probably will maybe fare a little bit better with the women.
Scott says, and I'll probably have to redact some of this because, we can't necessarily talk about certain things on YouTube, but I think the point he's trying to make is that these voters were probably most disaffected and decided, what's the point in voting?
Well, I mean,
and we can't white pill. Like, how much energy can we spend white pilling people on the merits of voting? Because if they're white pilled on voting, that's a tough hill to climb, marketing wise. Or if they're black pilled on voting, how do we white pill someone on voting? And Ron DeSantis has a catalog of delivering results. That's how you do it. I think he's the antidote to that, because that's the purpose of delivering results.
Because some of
But
these,
I agree, those people were disaffected by the 2020 election. And, on Gab, because I'm on Gab a lot, you saw a bunch of memes that were super popular that I think were feds. I think these were feds, basically trying to say there's no point in voting because it's already going to go. There's no point in voting. And I disagree with them on that, because, first of all, that's an excuse for cowardice. That reasoning is cowardice, I think. But second of all, there's something called the margin, the MOC, the margin of a cheat. So that's a factor, and that factor is why you should still vote. There's no reason to be blackpilled on that.
at the very least,
Down ballot
yeah. I mean,
matters
keep
as
in mind,
well.
one of the things in our county is that you can't get these idiot Republicans to vote for their school board, because I feel like the margin for the school board was the exact same as the primary. You got a couple thousand
In
more for the
here,
in
where
Carroll.
we live, no,
Yeah,
I don't. No, I think they did much better.
yeah, they all got over the hump, but it's not like they got I don't think they got drastically more votes than they got in the primary.
No, I think we're gonna hold out. I think we're gonna. No, no, they did. They did. I'm pretty sure they did.
Wasn't it like
But
5,000 though?
they have sizable leads where we live in the school board. Only one of the people does not. Only one of the good guys does not have a sizable enough lead. I'm worried about him making it, but otherwise, I actually think we're in a good spot. But at the end of the day, those voters that live in those states are another reason why I think DeSantis is a preferable path, because I think he secures Georgia for at least 4 more years. He gets Arizona. I think he wins Nevada. And
And
with
again,
that, and he wins that one Republican district in Maine, uh, then we get to 269. But I think he also puts Virginia in play. And Virginia needs to come home, because that's 13 electoral votes. It's a huge
and
state.
that was the old path to victory that Hillary Clinton banked on having, on blocking.
You do realize if we win Virginia and Arizona and Georgia,
Basically, the Bush.
I don't think Iowa and Florida are swing states anymore.
So basically, the Bush 04.
If we just secure this block, we're good. Glenn Youngkin, is an electoral juggernaut. Trump, I believe, was uniquely unpopular in Virginia. But again, if we were to turn to more traditional Republican voters, I think we have a secured path to election victory. He has 13 electoral college votes. That's as much as Michigan. Actually, that's more than Wisconsin, less than Michigan. Pennsylvania is 19, which is a whale, but it has 19 because of Pittsburgh and Philadelphia. It's not exactly a great sign.
That's where a lot of your dejected voters are going to be, is Pennsylvania.
And, yeah,
nothing's going to change in Pennsylvania. People are going to leave. So I mean,
yeah, and then Michigan and Wisconsin are also dejected voters. Maybe not as much Wisconsin, but Michigan and Pennsylvania, I don't think we're winning those again. I just don't. So I don't know. I think that's kind of wraps up our Trump DeSantis discussion. I think DeSantis is a guy moving forward, and I think Trump's petty pot shots are going to backfire on him. And I think his refusal to come back to Twitter is also going to backfire, because he wants to build Truth Social, and Truth Social is fizzling out. We did a live stream on Truth Social. So yes. So Scott agrees with me on the Fed status of the memers on Gab. Like, those were Feds. Those were completely Feds. And they're meant to depress the base, because it's psychological warfare. This is a warfare. It's psychological, but it is nonetheless a battle that we have to contend with. So we're gonna have one last thing to discuss, and that is meme review. Let's close out with some meme review because we are 2 hours and 9 minutes into this live stream. So it's actually time that we smash the idolatry of democracy with memes. Because in the end, when Jesus returns, he will smash idols. You know, Jesus is iconoclastic, which is based, by the way. So we're going to do some meme review. So I put NPC Russell Moore as the image header because I mentioned him in this article because he sees democracy as sacred, and we mock that. Yeah. So this is our starting off, going to bed the day before an election.
I don't know if that's the going to bed the day before election or the going to bed on the election night. Because I feel like it should be going to bed on election night, and that's what you're dreaming. Because he looks pretty strung out. It's 2:00 in the morning. It looks like on the clock, or almost
Okay,
3.
Yeah, it's 2:30.
This is on election night, not before. So I feel like the timing is just off.
Alrighty, I'm trying to like format this like the best way for visibility. So what would you rank this out of 10? That's generally our.
I gotta go 6 just because
I was thinking of 6. It's middle of the
missed the
road to
time.
me.
It missed the timing. Otherwise, that's probably a 7.5 if you have the time right.
So that's number 1. We're starting off gentle, okay? Just it gets a little bit more offensive. So we get the Shibu Inu meme of 1776 of 2016, counting the votes in one night. In 2020, please don't rush us is the wimpy one. Standard meme. I think this is very well done. Yeah, I think 7 because I'm not a huge fan of this meme template because but I think this is a 7. Okay, we're hearing 8 in the chat.
8 because it's standard, not exceptional, but standard.
Okay, here we got elections, and we have a tiny little toy train pulling a big engine, and then the Democrats and mainstream media flanking each side. I think this is pretty well done, but I still think it's a 7. And then the voting machines is a little small train.
I'll give it a 9. I kind of like it.
And it's original. Like you don't necessarily see this meme a whole lot.
It kind of reminds me of the hangover meme. It's just like all the drinks the night before, and that little the one that says voting machines is like the blue Powerade that's trying to pull you to shore. So I'll give it a 9 because I kind of like it. The other thing is, I mean,
this is
I don't want to delve too deep into what dump and roll means instead of pick and roll, but that's kind of what Mike Lindell talks about.
This is a pretty dank meme. If you're a fan of Pulp Fiction, this is going to be a theme of a lot of the memes moving forward. It's going to be like my ballot in democracy. So this is where the smashing the idol of democracy. The logic of the train one was the fact, just to respond to a comment in the chat, is the fact that a tiny little engine has no ability to pull a toy engine has no ability to pull a real train engine. So the idea that the voting machines or whatever in Arizona, they just break.
It's kind of like you're rooting on that. I mean, the problem with that meme is that it relies on a red tsunami, but it's kind of like relying on a blue Gatorade to recover your hangover.
Okay, so this meme I think is a 10.
I'll give it a 9.
I give it a 10 because I love it. So the theme in a lot of these memes is going to be my ballot or democracy getting killed by my ballot.
Yeah, but
I'm voting against democracy.
Is it
and it's this meme that emerged because democracy isn't a thing. So this meme, I'll explain it for audio listeners.
No.
If I put this in the audio sense,
is
Pulp Fiction. They're driving in the car with the hostage in the back seat, and then what's Samuel Jackson's character's name? Allegedly drives over a pothole, causing John Travolta's character to shoot the hostage in the back seat of the car, causing a blood spatter.
Well,
That they then have to
did he
go.
drive over a pothole?
Well, allegedly, it's left ambiguous, and it's a pretty Jules is his name. Thank you, chat. Allegedly drives over a pothole, and then they have to get a dead black person's
I
body
love that
cleaned,
scene.
and then Quentin
Drive around
Tarantino.
in a maxi pad.
Yes, Quentin Tarantino drops many hard R's in a movie that could not be made in after political correctness emerged in the mid 90s.
And Seinfeld did
So,
a parody of that scene.
oh, they did.
The wolf. I'm the wolf. I'm here to clean up your mess.
Oh, okay. Yes. So this is actually really targeted. I give this a solid 8. Like that last one was a 10. This one's an 8.
Yeah.
It's a little low hanging, but you're starting to see this as a meme template more often. This is Ted Kennedy. And it's making fun of that. Obviously, I believe the rule with tragedy is after like 20.2 years or whatever, something tragic becomes funny again. But I think the internet has broken that rules many times, as we will continue to do tonight. That's the South Park rule. So this is a 10 for Scott in the chat. I'm gonna give it an 8, but I loved it. This was one of the first memes that I saved, and then here we go. Here we go. This is the one that started it all. This is me voting a straight Republican ticket, and then Democracy, and it's Nicole Simpson and OJ Simpson. I believe her name was Nicole. And yeah, that story doesn't end well, except for the fact that the glove don't fit, you must acquit. So I guess OJ Simpson had a happy ending until he went to jail for. He went to jail for this, but on paper he went to jail for stealing his own autographs or something weird like that. But
I feel
he actually went to jail for this.
The labels should be reversed. Democracy should be OJ.
Why? No, this is about killing democracy.
Oh, okay. Killing democracy.
That's the meme here.
Slaughtered by it.
Yes. Yeah, that's a meme. So I give this a 9 because
this is a 10.
You think this is a 10. This again, it gets more offensive, but okay. So here we go.
This one.
Oh wait, here we got democracy as a bed, and then me voting a straight Republican ticket is Amber Heard. Now, allegedly, there was a video of Amber Heard pooping on the streets somewhere, like allegedly. Just saying. We know what she's capable of, and that emerged from the very ultra famous trial of Amber Heard and Johnny Depp. So we learned that she
because
on
this is
bed.
topical. It's a 9.
I think the concept is a 10. The execution is an 8.
Okay,
or a 7.
I mean,
so I'm gonna merge the two and give it an 8. I think the concept was a 10. But I don't think the execution matches the concept.
I mean, since there actually is a picture of the bed with the turd in it on the internet, like you could have just had that. Democracy. It's just a turd on the bed.
No, because this is before. This is a before picture.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know.
Okay, so here we're gonna get a little dark or gay, as I caption it. So democracy is Paul Pelosi, and voting GOP down the ticket is a hammer. We'll give this a 10. I like it.
I would agree.
This is a 10. It's offensive, but it gets more offensive, guys.
Hide the hammer.
Actually, this might be the second most offensive one here. There might be one that's more offensive than this. This could be the most offensive, but whoo, that's
hide
dank.
The hammer.
That is dank. Hide the hammer is exactly the game they type. So I don't know whether the hammer goes into his face or up his butt, but that's Paul Pelosi's night for you. And by the way, we have a dark function on Evangelical Dark Web, not false advertising. So here we go. About to get pretty offensive.
I mean, I've seen this meme template before.
Yeah, this meme template is St. George Floyd martyred on the streets of Mini Nazareth. I heard it called, so I'm gonna steal it. Um, yeah, so Derek Chauvin is me voting a straight Republican ticket, and democracy is St. George Floyd. But obviously, we know that. See, the thing that holds this meme back is the fact that we know the role that fentanyl played in the death and martyrdom of St. George Floyd. But otherwise, this is a 10. It's offensive. It's to the point. It smashes the idol of democracy in the exact way that we needed it smashed. So this is a 10. And yeah, for the most part, I got a lot of. I chose some of the best memes that I saw out of this little street. And I was hoping that tonight would be more optimistic and we could just, more jokingly say about this. But evidently, I'm not black pilled, by the way. So this is more of a post election meme. I don't know what this is from, actually. This is
I know
Adult
it's
Swim,
is it not
but this
Trevor
is
Noah?
old. No, that
Um,
looks way too funny to be Trevor Noah. So this is the whole gunshots. Why would you do this meme template? So GOP is shooting MAGA candidates and then asking why would Trump do this? And this has to go with the fact that Mitch McConnell, as we talked about at the beginning of this live stream, intentionally screwed over winnable races and winnable Republicans to fund Mehmet Oz. And, again, Herschel Walker delivered. So I don't think,
I'll give it an 8 just because the meme template's a little stale, but at the end of the day, that is what
I
happened.
think it's a 7. I think it makes a point. I don't think it makes it exceedingly well,
Well, I
but
think it makes the point. It's just, it's a little played out. I don't know how. It's a little old.
okay. Well, then this one I captioned: "The day's vaulting will continue. How I sleep knowing all my enemies are vaccinated." This one's an 8 for me, but I like it. And send us your final questions since we're about to wrap up the stream. And don't forget to hit the like button on your way out. That would be mucho apreciado. That's not really good Spanish, but whatever. So I give this one an 8. What's your
I'll give it a
take
7.
on it?
I mean,
And this article is available at Evangelical Dark Web if you want to steal these memes and give them to a friend. I'm all about sharing offensive memes. But otherwise, since we're wrapping up here, I don't need to share that anymore. So, Evangelical Dark Web is a news gathering and Christian commentary ministry, and you can support it a couple of ways. Subscribe to the channel. If you've listened this long and haven't subscribed, I don't know what you're doing. A heart of stone, maybe, but just go ahead and hit the subscribe button, like button. Those are just the easy ways you can support us. We also have socials that you can look into down below, and the higher effort ways that don't cost anything that are still free. We have a newsletter, evangelicaldarkweb.org. That is linked in the description. Is a newsletter you can subscribe to, and or a Telegram, which you can subscribe to as well. And yes, turn on the bell. That helps. Maybe, I don't know. YouTube has a high failure rate on those, but it always helps. I believe 13% of you do the bell, so it'd be cool if that went higher. So, like I said, those are the medium effort ways: is to subscribe to a newsletter or a Telegram. And the highest effort ways, if you really want to support us, this is we have a Patreon like system because Patreon does censor people, so we don't use Patreon. We built our own in the website, and it's a Patreon like system. You can give whatever you want, and that will give you like 7 days behind the paywall just as a thank you. But otherwise, we have monthly subscription plans for like $5 a month, starting at $5 a month if you want to support Evangelical Dark Web and Christian commentators that you like. because the ones that you don't are exceedingly well funded. I'm a dude with a $40 flag behind me, a $30 microphone, and maybe a $100 webcam. And, apparently we do better videos here than the $100 million He Gets Us campaign. But, we got to exceed bigger hurdles and stuff like that. So, any support is appreciated, and we don't really pocket this money whatsoever. And by really, I mean I've never pocketed this money. It stays in a separate bank account, and I'm pretty transparent about that. um so anyway, that's just a little bit of housekeeping. We didn't really get any questions in our last call, so I think we can just wrap it up. We're 2.5 hours in, so I think it's a good time to drop off. So have a blessed day, and we will catch you on